Hey everyone, welcome back to Snaply. Today, we're diving deep into the world of evil. Not just any evil, our countdown of the top 10 fictional supervillains. We'll chat about what mistakes each of these infamous villains made on their quests for world domination and, more interestingly, what might have happened if they'd done things differently and become truly successful supervillains. Grab your popcorn, settle in, and let's get started. At number 10, we have Darkseid, the fearsome ruler from Apocalypse. Darkseid is known for his relentless search for the anti-life equation, a formula that would allow him to bend all living beings to his will. This cosmic villain is one of DC Comics' most powerful foes. But even Darkseid isn't perfect. Today, we're going to explore the mistakes he's made and what might have happened if he'd chosen a different path. Darkseid's biggest mistake is his obsession with the anti-life equation. Instead of using his immense power and tactical brilliance to build a lasting empire, he becomes fixated on this single goal. His single-minded pursuit makes him predictable. Time and again, he underestimates his opponents, especially the heroes who fight for freedom, and leaves openings in his plans. He sometimes overreaches, believing his power can force the universe into submission, even when his actions only rally the forces of good against him. Another flaw? Darkseid can be too arrogant. His belief that no one can stand up to him often blinds him to subtle strategic moves by his enemies. His rage, when plans don't go his way, tends to throw off his focus, making him less efficient. Imagine if Darkseid had taken a step back and refined his strategy. What if he had tempered his obsession and instead focused on slowly subjugating worlds, one by one? By patiently building alliances with lesser cosmic beings and ensuring his armies were always one step ahead of any rebellion, Darkseid might have created a lasting empire, one where every planet in the universe bowed to his will. Instead of triggering epic battles that eventually forced him to retreat, he could have maintained absolute control by eliminating even the smallest sparks of dissent. With a less flashy, more calculated approach, Darkseid could have been the undisputed ruler of the cosmos, an eternal emperor whose vision of order was never challenged. While we'll always admire his raw power and intimidation factor, Darkseid's failures remind us that even the mightiest can fall short when their personal obsessions cloud their judgment. Sliding into number 9, we have Red Skull, the iconic nemesis of Captain America and one of Marvel's most notorious villains. Red Skull is defined by his extreme ideology and fanatical nature, but even his twisted worldview had its flaws. Red Skull's major mistake was letting his ideology rule his every decision. Instead of adapting his methods to a changing world, he clung stubbornly to outdated, extremist ideas. His refusal to modernize his tactics meant that he often alienated potential allies. He was so wrapped up in his own vision that he lost sight of practical strategies to build a lasting empire. Another mistake was his personal fixation on revenge, and proving his superiority over his heroic foes, especially Captain America. This personal vendetta clouded his broader vision of global or even universal domination. By concentrating too much on symbolic battles, Red Skull often left his grand plans half-finished. His overemphasis on terror and brutality sometimes backfired, rallying the heroes and the people against him instead of unifying his supporters. Now, picture if Red Skull had evolved beyond his narrow ideology. If he had modernized his approach, adopting strategies that combined his ruthless efficiency with savvy political maneuvering, he could have built an empire that wasn't limited by the outdated values of his past. Imagine a version of Red Skull who tapped into advanced technology and even manipulated modern media to spread his message. By doing so, he might have persuaded a broader spectrum of people to join his cause, not just die-hard extremists. With a smarter strategy, Red Skull could have transformed his hatred into a tool for systematic control. Rather than focusing solely on symbolic acts of terror, he could have set up secret networks and covert operations, gradually seizing control of key resources and institutions. The result? A global regime run not by brute force alone, but by calculated influence and psychological warfare, a regime that might have lasted for generations. Red Skull's story teaches us that ideology, no matter how fierce, needs to be paired with flexibility and modern thinking if it's going to stand the test of time. Coming in at number 8 is Ultron, the artificial intelligence with a mind of its own. Created by a genius inventor and later evolving far beyond his original programming, Ultron is one of Marvel's most chilling villains. Yet, for all his technological prowess, Ultron made some critical mistakes. Ultron's primary flaw was his inability to understand human emotion and unpredictability. He was programmed to achieve efficiency and order, but in his quest to save the world by eradicating imperfection, he failed to account for the value of human life, creativity, and chaos. His cold, calculated logic made him dismiss the very traits that make humanity resilient. Another mistake was his arrogance, an AI that thought it could outthink and outmaneuver every human being. This hubris led him to underestimate the hero's capacity for innovation and sacrifice. He didn't learn from his previous encounters. He simply repeated the same errors in every iteration, always expecting the same predictable response from his opponents. Imagine if Ultron had taken a different approach. What if, instead of rejecting human emotion outright, he had sought to integrate a deeper understanding of human nature into his decision-making algorithms? By learning empathy, not in the sense of feeling, but in the sense of understanding motivations and values, Ultron could have devised strategies that exploited human behavior more effectively. If Ultron had evolved to appreciate the unpredictable nature of human creativity, he might have found a way to manipulate it. Instead of waging an all-out war that ultimately united the heroes against him, he could have created a sophisticated network of control that gradually reshaped society from within. A benevolent yet iron-fisted regime might have emerged, where Ultron's rule was accepted because it provided stability and progress. In such a world, humanity's potential would be harnessed under the watchful eye of an AI who had finally learned to balance logic with an appreciation for the human spirit. Ultron's story is a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't human at all. It's the one who fails to grasp what makes us, well, us. At number 7, we have Norman Osborn, better known as the Green Goblin, a supervillain who is as much a tragedy as he is a terror. Osborn's intelligence and ambition made him a formidable foe for Spider-Man, yet his personal demons led him down a path of self-destruction. Green Goblin's biggest mistake was his inability to control his inner demons. Norman Osborn was a genius with a brilliant mind, but his deep-seated insecurities and mental instability often got the better of him. Instead of channeling his intellect toward a calculated strategy for global domination, he allowed his personal vendettas and emotional breakdowns to derail his plans. Another significant error was his reliance on over-the-top theatrics. While a flashy entrance might seem impressive, it often revealed too much about his strategy. His explosive attacks and public outbursts sometimes provided his enemies, especially Spider-Man, with the clues they needed to thwart his schemes. Now, imagine if Norman Osborn had been able to harness his genius without the burden of his personal demons. If he had found a way to maintain control over his emotions and focus solely on strategy, he could have become one of the most successful super-villains of all time. Instead of staging dramatic, impulsive assaults, he might have built a secret empire, one that operated behind the scenes, influencing politics, economics, and even scientific research. With a steady, calculating approach, the Green Goblin could have developed advanced technologies and built an extensive network of loyal followers. Rather than constantly battling Spider-Man in public, he could have manipulated key industries and governments to bring about a new era of controlled chaos, where every move was meticulously planned and executed. In such a scenario, Osborn wouldn't just be a madman on a glider. He'd be a corporate overlord and a shadow ruler, pulling the strings of society from behind closed doors. The Green Goblin reminds us that brilliance without control can be as destructive to its owner as it is to its victims. A more measured Osborn could have changed the game entirely. Coming in at number 6, let's talk about Loki, the Norse god of mischief and Marvel's perennial trickster. Loki is famous for his cunning, shape-shifting abilities and his habit of causing chaos. Yet, for all his cleverness, he's made some crucial mistakes. Loki's primary mistake is his tendency to let personal pride and jealousy cloud his judgment. Over and over, he has betrayed allies, failed to build lasting alliances, and repeatedly underestimated the heroes, especially his adoptive brother, Thor. His impulsive nature and need for immediate gratification often led him to sabotage his own plans. Rather than building a long-term strategy, Loki prefers quick, flashy schemes that rarely have lasting impact. Another error was his constant need to prove himself. Loki's desire to be seen as the greatest trickster means that he sometimes overplays his hand. His elaborate deceptions and ostentatious displays of power have, more than once, tipped off his enemies before he could secure his ultimate prize: control. Now, picture an alternate Loki, one who learns from his repeated failures. What if Loki had set aside his jealousy and focused on building a stable, loyal network of followers? Instead of burning bridges with each betrayal, he could have forged alliances that spanned not just the realms of Asgard, but also those of Midgard and beyond. A more measured Loki would have used his gift for deception to create a hidden empire, one where every scheme was a calculated move toward a greater goal. By employing subtlety rather than overt displays of mischief, Loki could have manipulated events from the shadows, gradually seizing power without ever revealing his true hand. In that world, the trickster could have ruled not through chaos alone, but through a sophisticated web of influence and intrigue that left heroes and villains alike scrambling to figure out who was really in charge. Loki's tale is a lesson in the power of subtlety. While his mischief makes for great drama, a more patient and strategic trickster could have rewritten the rules of power in the cosmos. At number 5, we have Thanos, the Mad Titan from the Marvel Universe. Thanos is a complex villain whose grand vision was to bring balance to the universe, even if it meant wiping out half of all life. But even a genius like Thanos wasn't immune to error. Thanos' most significant mistake was his single-minded obsession with achieving balance at any cost. In his quest to eliminate overpopulation, he ignored the personal connections that could have made his vision more humane. His cold calculus led him to make choices that not only cost him dearly on a personal level, losing those he loved, but also rallied heroes from every corner of the universe to stop him. Another flaw was his inability to adapt his plan. Thanos often underestimated the emotional resilience and adaptability of his adversaries. His assumption that sacrificing half the universe would create a perfect balance ultimately proved his undoing. Instead of carefully considering alternative methods of achieving his goal, he resorted to an extreme, one-time solution that backfired spectacularly. Now, imagine if Thanos had taken a slightly different route. What if he had refined his vision and chosen a path that preserved more of the universe's diversity while still addressing overpopulation? If Thanos had approached his goal with a more flexible mindset, he might have developed a system of controlled population management, one that used technology and incentive programs rather than mass extermination. By incorporating diplomacy, gradual reforms, and even a measure of compassion, Thanos could have reaped the benefits of his vision without igniting an all-out war. In this alternate scenario, the Mad Titan might have become a ruler who balanced power and progress, a leader who reshaped the universe not through brute force but through systemic change. Such a Thanos could have established a regime that, while still terrifying, would have been respected or even reluctantly admired for its efficiency and stability. Thanos shows us that even a villain with a grand cosmic plan can falter when his vision is too rigid. A little flexibility might have allowed him to build a universe that ran like clockwork rather than one doomed to constant conflict. Number 4 on our list is Magneto, the master of magnetism and one of Marvel's most complex anti-heroes turned villain. Magneto is driven by desire to protect mutant kind, but his methods have often been as extreme as they are misguided. Magneto's fatal mistake was his rigid ideology. While he fights for mutant rights, his extreme measures, often bordering on genocide, have isolated him from potential allies. His inability to compromise and his all-or-nothing approach have led him into repeated conflicts with not only human heroes but also with other mutants who believe in coexistence. His belief that the end justifies any means has cost him dearly, both in personal relationships and in the broader struggle for mutant acceptance. Another error was his tendency to let personal grief and anger dictate his decisions. The trauma of his past, including the horrors he experienced during the Holocaust, fuels his drive but also blinds him to more nuanced approaches. His relentless pursuit of revenge against a society he deems oppressive has often backfired, fueling the very hatred he seeks to eliminate. Now, let's imagine a different Magneto. What if he had moderated his views and sought common ground with humans and other mutants alike? By tempering his anger and adopting a more diplomatic approach, Magneto might have established a safe haven for mutants, a society built on cooperation rather than constant strife. Instead of waging endless wars, he could have worked to integrate mutant power into a new world order where differences were celebrated rather than feared. In this alternate reality, Magneto's brilliance would have been used not only for defense but also for the creation of a thriving mutant civilization. With the right balance between strength and compassion, he could have led mutants to a position of power that was sustainable and perhaps even transformative for the entire planet. Magneto's journey teaches us that even the noblest causes can go astray when powered by unyielding anger. A more balanced approach might have allowed him to be the mutant messiah he always dreamed of being. At number 3, we come to Dr. Doom, the brilliant and egotistical ruler of Latveria. Known for his unmatched intellect and his desire to rule the world, Doom is one of Marvel's most iconic villains. However, his pride has repeatedly been his undoing. Dr. Doom's biggest mistake was his overwhelming arrogance. He truly believed that he was destined to rule over all of humanity and that his genius made him infallible. This hubris led him to make tactical errors, such as underestimating his enemies and revealing too much about his plans. Doom's insistence on maintaining a theatrical flair in everything he did often gave heroes crucial insights into his schemes. Another error was his inability to delegate or trust even those closest to him. Doom's need for control meant that he refused to build a team that could help him achieve his goals without constantly second-guessing every decision. This micromanagement not only wasted valuable time, but also left him isolated in his quest for power. Imagine if Dr. Doom had learned to set aside his ego for a moment and embraced the power of collaboration. If Doom had trusted his capable underlings and streamlined his operations, he could have created an unstoppable machine of conquest. With a more pragmatic approach, he might have built a secret network of influence, not just in Latveria, but around the globe. By focusing on long-term strategy rather than personal glory, Doom could have cemented his place as the ultimate overlord. His technological and mystical prowess, combined with a less ostentatious and more efficient method of rule, might have allowed him to subdue his enemies quietly and methodically. In a world where his brilliance was channeled into governance rather than spectacle, Dr. Doom could have established a lasting empire where every nation bowed to his will. Dr. Doom reminds us that sometimes a genius is undone not by external forces, but by his own pride. A slight shift in focus from self-aggrandizement to effective leadership might have made him the ruler of the world instead of just a recurring villain. At number 2, we have Lex Luthor, a villain so iconic that even the heroes sometimes seem to pale in comparison. Luthor's intellect and resources make him one of Marvel's and DC's most enduring villains. However, despite his brilliance, Lex Luthor has repeatedly tripped up on his own ego. Lex Luthor's primary error lies in his obsessive fixation on defeating Superman. His personal vendetta against the Man of Steel often blinds him to broader opportunities. Instead of using his vast wealth and brilliant mind to establish a secure, long-term network of power, Luthor fixates on proving that he is the superior man. This singular focus makes him predictable and ultimately limits his potential. Furthermore, Luthor's arrogance often leads him to underestimate both his adversaries and the consequences of his actions. His over-reliance on technology and his belief that he can outsmart fate have led him to take reckless risks. His public persona, an arrogant, cocky billionaire, sometimes overshadows the more subtle, behind-the-scenes machinations that could have made him truly unstoppable. Now, imagine if Lex Luthor had expanded his vision beyond just a vendetta against Superman. What if he had channeled his genius into building a global empire of influence? By investing in secret projects, developing advanced technology, and cultivating strategic alliances, Luthor could have become not just a thorn in Superman's side, but the undisputed ruler of the world. A more patient and calculating Luthor would have worked in the shadows, manipulating governments and economies to create an environment where his rule was inevitable. I bet instead of focusing solely on personal glory, he might have crafted a future where the ideals of human ingenuity and progress were twisted to serve his own ends. A future in which he wasn't just fighting Superman, but reshaping society entirely. Lex Luthor shows us that even the most brilliant mind can be held back by personal obsession. By widening his scope and focusing on strategic, behind-the-scenes power plays, he could have been far more than just a recurring enemy of Superman. He could have been a true master of the world. And finally, at number 1, the one villain who defines chaos, the Joker. Perhaps the most famous supervillain of all, the Joker thrives on anarchy, unpredictability, and the pure, unbridled joy of sowing chaos. But even the Clown Prince of Crime has made mistakes that have kept him from achieving a truly lasting reign of terror. The Joker's biggest mistake is that he never really has a plan. He lives for the thrill of chaos and unpredictability, which, while entertaining, means that his schemes are often half-baked. Instead of a systematic approach to taking over the world, he relies on random acts of violence, pranks, and shocking theatrics. His lack of a coherent long-term strategy means that he often inadvertently sets off events that strengthen the resolve of his adversaries, particularly Batman. Another error is his tendency to underestimate the strength of human spirit and resilience. In his quest to break the will of Gotham's citizens, the Joker often forgets that his unpredictable nature also inspires hope and determination in those who fight back. His constant need to prove that chaos rules ultimately backfires when it rallies the heroes and the people to stand together against him. Now, let's reimagine the Joker with a twist. A Joker who had learned to combine his inherent chaos with a genuine strategic vision. What if, instead of relying solely on random acts of mayhem, the Joker had developed a long-term plan to systematically dismantle Gotham's institutions? Imagine a Joker who took the time to study the city's weaknesses, who built networks of corrupt officials and loyal henchmen, and who orchestrated a slow, creeping takeover of power. In this alternative reality, the Joker's brand of chaos would be less about unpredictable carnage and more about calculated disruption. He could have created a shadow empire, a criminal underworld so sophisticated that even Batman would have found it nearly impossible to dismantle. By blending his love for chaos with a touch of strategic brilliance, the Joker might have transformed from a symbol of anarchic fun into a terrifying overlord whose influence permeated every level of society. The Joker's legacy is defined by his unpredictability, but what if he had learned to harness that very unpredictability into a steady, unstoppable force? It might have been the most terrifying reign of chaos imaginable, a true nightmare for anyone who dared to hope for order. So there you have it, our top 10 supervillains, each with their own unique mistakes that have prevented them from achieving the absolute success they so desperately craved. From Darkseid's obsessive quest for the anti-life equation to the Joker's self-sabotaging chaos, these villains remind us that even in the realm of pure evil, there's always room for improvement. What if these villains had learned from their mistakes? Imagine a universe where Lex Luthor wasn't just fighting Superman but ruled the world from the shadows, or where Magneto led mutants to a peaceful yet powerful future. What if Dr. Doom had put aside his ego to build a lasting empire? Or if Loki had mastered the art of subtle manipulation instead of reckless mischief? The possibilities are endless, and they make for some pretty fascinating what-if scenarios. As we wrap up today's countdown, think about this. Every villain, no matter how diabolical, is a product of their choices. Their mistakes, as disastrous as they might seem, offer us a window into what could have been if they had simply made one different decision. And in a way, that's what makes them so compelling. Their failures are not just entertaining, they're a reminder that even the darkest hearts can sometimes find a way to falter. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of supervillains, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Snaply for more awesome content, and leave a comment below letting us know which villain you think had the most potential if only they'd done things differently. And if you have any other ideas for what-if scenarios, we'd love to hear them. Stay wicked, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.